Hi again. In a previous offering of this course, one student made a great point about persuasion and justification and the relation between those two. She did it in an argument that she presented for the entire class, and I think we can all learn by listening to her. So here it is.
Strong Arguments Don't Always Persuade Everyone by Jessica Hyde from the United Kingdom. It's not enough for an argument to be strong, valid, and sound to be persuasive. You can have an argument for which every premise is genuinely true and where every conceivable flaw in the argument is negated and still not have it be persuasive. There will almost always be someone who either misunderstands the argument or who blindly believes the opposite of a premise in face of facts. Human beings aren't always logical and don't always believe scientifically proven cause and effect. Religious and cultural beliefs can be too hard to overcome. So, even the best arguments can have disbelievers. Thank you, Jessica. What a great argument. I'm convinced. Remember, to persuade someone is to convince them or change their mind into believing what you wanted them to believe and what you were trying to get them to believe. Whereas justifying is giving them a reason to believe your conclusion. And those are different because, as Jessica argues very well, sometimes people make mistakes. You give a perfectly good argument with perfectly good premises, and it's formulated as clearly as could ever be expected, and yet they don't understand it or they don't believe your premises, and so they're not persuaded. But still, you did give a good argument. So, you succeeded in justifying your belief. But was it a good argument if you were trying to persuade them? Well, maybe not. If your purpose was to persuade them, then it might matter to you that you didn't persuade them. Whereas if your purpose was to justify the conclusion, to give a reason to believe it, then you did succeed in that purpose. So whether you see it as a good argument or not is going to depend a lot on what your purpose is. But as Jessica points out, sometimes you're going to want to persuade, and it's not always going to be easy to turn an argument that justifies and gives a good reason into one that persuades. That is going to depend on making sure that they do accept your premises and that they do understand your arguments. And that's yet another trick that we haven't discussed perhaps as much as we should have. And we learn another lesson from one of the student comments on Jessica's argument. Here it is. From Judith. I think Jessica has opened a very interesting discussion with her argument. Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate that. We do too. What I'm learning is the purpose of an argument is to state with clarity and some degree of certainty an opinion or point of view. A valid, strong, and sound argument in and of itself may never persuade or convert anyone to adopt a different way of thinking. So what? What a strong argument does is communicate clearly what one thinks and why they think it. So I guess the benchmark of success for many arguments is not complete persuasion, but is how clearly one is understood. If someone's intent is to blindly refute everything, that's not an intellectually honest engagement. I've found that in constructing better, more thoughtful arguments, people may not agree with me, but they're far more considerate of what I have to say. And by using much of what we're learning, I'm listening much more intently to other views. Yes, Jessica, many things do defy logic. We just keep trying to do our best. Thank you, Judith. What a great point. Because what you've done is you've shown us that there are other goals of arguments in addition to persuasion and justification. The one you mentioned was understanding. Sometimes the point of an argument is not to bring other people over to your point of view, but just to make them understand why you hold the position that you do. You're trying to show them your reasons, even if you know that those reasons are not reasons that they themselves are going to accept. Well, why would you want to do that? As you say, because it makes them more considerate of what you believe and of you. Because if we understand each other and the reasons why we hold our positions, we'll respect each other more and be more considerate. Not always. Of course, there are going to be exceptions. But as a general trend, we're going to get along with each other much better if we understand why we disagree and what reasons we have. The example where this is not working is politics. Everybody knows that politicians just yell at each other and don't really listen to each other. They just scream out what's going to appeal to their base without thinking about what the real reasons are for the positions they're holding. I think they'd be a lot better off, and we'd be a lot better off, if they were to take Judith's lesson and say, give us the reasons so that we can understand why you're adopting that position. We'll give you our reasons so you can understand why we're adopting our position, and then we can seek a compromise by satisfying the values that we both are most concerned about. And arguments can play a role then in helping us cooperate with each other and live with each other and compromise on the very important issues that we all face. Another lesson that Jessica and Judith have taught us is don't set your sights too high. If your goal is to persuade everybody, you're going to be constantly frustrated because there are always going to be people out there who don't understand your argument or who understand it but are obstinate and refuse to accept your premise no matter how well you argue for it. So, if you try to convince everybody, you're not going to succeed. So give it up. You can't convince or persuade everyone. Still, you can accomplish a lot. You can help them understand you. You can come to understand them. And you can give them good reasons to believe your conclusion. Well, that's a lot. And that can be very important, even if they're not persuaded. And you, if you're justified in believing your conclusion, can have reason to believe that the fault lies with them, not with you, when they don't accept your conclusion. Of course, you probably can't convince them of that. You can't convince them that the fault lies with them, not with you. But still, you might have accomplished your goals if your goals are reasonable. Namely, to increase understanding, to find the reasons for your belief, and to present those reasons in ways that people ought to understand and accept. That's what justification is, and that's what understanding is, and those can be extremely valuable in arguments, even if there's still some people out there who aren't persuaded.